Samiang's husband worked in a factory that supplied the US brand Walmart. He started working there when he was 16 years old and earned around $3 a month. In January, when fellow workers took to the streets demanding a doubling of the minimum wage, he joined them. The Cambodian government's own commission had found that a livable minimum wage needed to be around $160 a month. So when the government announced an increase well below that, the reaction was immediate.
Given this build-up, there was going to be some massive reaction, and there was. What wasn't anticipated was then the counter-reaction, which was the murdering and shooting of workers.
This footage was recorded by garment workers from their dorms. It shows police firing live ammunition directly at hundreds of civilians who were blocking a road outside the Cambodia Industrial Park area. And the aftermath. Rights activist Moses Nieng takes me to the place where the killings happened.
At that time, there was a battlefield between the armies and the workers. There, a couple of people were shot and dead, and over 40 people got injured and sent to the hospital.
When Kiat Samingan heard the news on the radio, she tried to call her husband. She couldn't get through, so she called her brother-in-law's phone. This photo was taken when her husband was being rushed to hospital. Four other people were killed during the protests, and a 16-year-old boy is missing, believed dead. 23 others were arrested, including union leader Vaughan Po, whose beating and arrest was recorded here by the rights group Lekado. He's being held in a prison near the Vietnamese border. His wife has repeatedly made applications for bail, and they have been repeatedly denied. Vaughan Po and the others are being charged with destroying public property and inciting violence. The police say the protesters were anarchists who needed to be chased out. There's been no investigation into why live bullets were used and no talk of compensation.
Basically, the government is on record privately to me as saying, as far as they're concerned, not a single dollar in compensation is going to be going to any of the families of the deceased or any of the injured. So that to get any sort of compensation, there's an ongoing process where brands will be asked to contribute to a fund that's being put together.
Ken Liu represents around 150 garment and footwear factories in Cambodia. He says they will be seeking, not paying compensation, as the industry lost millions of dollars due to the strikes and protests.
You know, we're the one who actually suffered in this whole incident. Who's seeking compensation for us? Buyers are obviously not going to give us any cent. You know, it is unfortunate that, you know, the lady you spoke to lost her husband. But then again, you've got to ask, why was he involved in? Was he involved in a demonstration?
Yes.
Some people claim that they are bystanders. Oh my God.
No, he was part of the demonstration.
Yeah,
he was striking for a better living wage. He said he couldn't survive, he couldn't live on $100, and he thought he'd take the chance to, as the ILO says, you have a right to strike, and Cambodia has signed the ILO. Yeah. So he took the right to strike on that day, and he was killed.
He has the right to strike. He has the right to strike peacefully. He has no right to strike and engage in violence.
He didn't engage in violence, she says.
Really?
There's no evidence.
The whole demonstration engaged in violence.
He walked down the street.
Why was he there when people were... If I was a peaceful demonstrator, and I see in front of me a few hundreds, if not thousands, of demonstrators first, and on the other end, I see a few hundred anti-riot police with rifles. And if I'm not involved, am I going to stay there? I'm going to scoot my ass home.
The garment industry generates $5.5 billion from the 600 factories in Cambodia.
It accounts for well over 80% of the export GDP, single largest industry in the country. You know, the fate of the garment industry sort of controls the fate of the economy at this stage.
Right now it's fueling rapid development in the capital, Phnom Penh, where signs of the new rich are everywhere. But the industry says they can't afford to raise wages because the brands, the buyers, are not willing to pay more.
Investors are here to make money. Investors are not here for charity. Investors are not here because of good compliance. Investors are here because we need to make money. So if we make money, we continue to stay here. If we don't, then very naturally they need to start to look at leaving, and they will.
Where really could they go?
It's not a question of where really could they go. Now, Vietnam has a higher minimum wage, yes, but only slightly higher. But their productivity is much higher. You know, and Indonesia, although yeah, it's got a ridiculously high minimum wage, but really, if you want productivity adjusted, unit cost per output is probably on par with Cambodia.
This excuse has been used by the Garment Manufacturer Associations in Cambodia, GMAT, for many years. It's an old song, and it means we need to have a new tune. Blood of the workers painted on the t-shirts of Gap, on the shoes of Puma, of Nike, that is hurting these big brands. And they do not want to leave Cambodia. In fact, they put pressure on the government to find a solution.
The Cambodian Garment Association says they will be able to pay $160 a month in 5 years' time. It's something echoed by one of the major brands, H&M, who has pledged to pay a living wage in all its factories in Cambodia and Bangladesh by 2018.
It's positive they're saying this, but on the other hand, flip the comment around and say, in what other industry would you tolerate a major investor acknowledging that what's paid now is not a living wage? They themselves will try to get to it, but in the meantime, in the interim, in 5 years, the profits will continue to boom, the industry will continue to boom, and we'll get to this small issue of the fact that workers can't live off, the workers who are making the clothing can't live off the legal wage.
Unions in Cambodia are not willing to wait for 5 years. So Po An Yang started working in a garment factory when she was 16. She's now one of the union leaders battling for a pay rise. She tells her members that they shouldn't be afraid to take to the streets again. The industry is warning that this will not be tolerated. Ken Lu says there will be mass sackings sooner rather than later. Kiat Semiang, who's now raising her daughter without a father, is going to go back to her job in the factory, making clothes for global brands Gap and H&M. For FSRN and The Real News, Rebecca Henschke, Phnom Penh.